The Gemara Megillah Daf Yud Beis and Beis. By Yom Hashvi Kitoiv Leiv HaMelech B'Yoyin. When the Melech heart was freilich with wine. Omar Rava Yom Hashvi Shabbos. Haya Yisrael Oichlin V'Shoisin. Klal Yisrael eat and drink. Matzchilim b'divrei Torah u'b'divrei Tishbachos. Aval ha'umas ha'ilam she'oichlin v'shoisin ein matzchilim b'divrei Tiflis. When the goyim get together and they start eating and drinking, so then all the narishkeit comes out. But when Yidden get together and have a kiddush and they're oichlin and shoisim, toiv leiv hamelech b'yayin, comes out divrei Torah. And how much more so when the divrei Torah is about the yayin. And the Maral explains in the Sefer Or Chodesh, Klal Adover, Kitachlis Yisrael, who Amayle Aloikis. We have a ruchnistic Amaila, divine people. L'chein, when we eat and drink, v'heim b'shleimus shalahem, v'az mevakshin l'daber divrei Torah. When we come to our shleimus, what comes out of us is Torah. The goyim, when they get to the shleimus of their gof, what comes out of them, by us, wine is a ruchnistic thing. So what comes out of us is a whole shear on hilchas wine at a kiddush, and perhaps the other inyanim that come out of the kiddush. And this Abaisai, we know the Kuzari says in the Maimer Beis, in Ois Nun, that the Seidus of Avodah Eloiki are Yira, Ahava, and Simcha. He says, but the Yemei Tainus, people think, what's the biggest day? The days of the Tainesim. It's not more than Besimchas and the Shabbos and the Yom Tovim and the Simcha that comes from Machshava. You have to track and think when the person is with Tachnunim and Achna. Also in Simcha, it has to be a directed Simcha, but Davar Eloiki, Ubimitzvasai, Tzricha Machshava and Kavanah. In order to be Mesameach, Mitach Ahavas Hashem, and to be Makar, the Toivis of Hashem. And Mamela, it's a very, very big avodah. The avodah of Simcha, the avodah of a Kiddush. It's a very big avodah. And we're going to today start the avodah in halachic sense, to try to know halachically how to do things right at a Kiddush. The emes is, I had here over 50 things to talk about. I don't know if we'll get even past the first one. I wanted to talk about all the different things that come up at a Kiddush. I was just told that you spoke already about Chalent. So one of the issues could be knocked off the list. But let's start with wine, because that's how you start a Kiddush. And then Bez Hashem, we'll go from there and see where we get to. Also, we weren't Zachor yet to talk about the sugya of Yayin, Poiter, Kol Mina Mashka, Vein Beis Medrash B'lei Chiddush. So Mamela, Bez Hashem, we'll try to cover this topic properly. Bez Hashem. The Shulchan Aruch is in Sif Beis in Kufayin Dalid, and the Gemara in Brachos and Daf Memalav on the Beis. Omar Achia Pat Poiteres Kol Minei Meichel. Kemoi that we know that that bread patters all foods. So too wine patters all Minei Mashkin. In the same vein, maybe even in the same lumdis. Kemoi that bread patters all foods, chickens and everything. So too wine patters drinks. This is a chiddush to some people. The emes is that Taisus and Brachos. If you didn't know this halacha, he says, well, pas poiteres, ain't halacha, and therefore so too yayin doesn't poiter. Lemaisa, this of course is not halacha. We paskin clearly yayin is poiter. Wine patters all drinks. That's clear. The Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber over here bring down in two places. In Timkufay Dalzi Beis in Reish Chesif to Zayin. I'll read you what we have here. Yayin poiter kol minim ashkin. Just learned the whole world of a whole ganze sef. And afilu. The chiddush is not just from the bracha achrayna, which people don't know. The chiddush is even the bracha rishayna. The Shalom adds, I feel it from the bracha rishayna. You make a paper agafen and it patters your apple juice. And Rabbi say, this l'chayra is the first thing that you have to know when you come to discuss a kiddush. That when a person goes to a kiddush and he drinks wine, when a person goes to a kiddush and he drinks wine, he has to know that wine patters the beer and wine patters the schnapps. And wine patters the water and the apple juice and everything. What's the reason? The Mishabru over here in Tzivkot and Beis brings down the lashon of the Taisis, because Iker Mashke there's a certain chshivas. It's like a joke. You're going to go and give a praise to the Eibishter for the water, for the other things. You already gave a praise for the king. You already were meshabeach. That's the most important. All of his subjects are included. And everybody else is tafel lashon of the taisvis to the bracha. Everyone else is tafel to the bracha. In other words, I praise the Rebbeinu Shalom for the spitz drink. Included in that, it's all drinks. Darach HaShulchan has a different reason in Siv Daled. He says because wine has a mila that it's misameach. Somehow that explains that yesh la mila misameach, and therefore somehow it has a certain chshivas. The Maisa, you can clear already. Maybe a nafkamina of those two reasons. Is it because it's the roish of mashkim, or is it because it's misamech? Maybe the nafkamina could be grape juice. Does grape juice pater all other drinks? What's a local ma'isa on that? That's a shaila that we clear a lot of times in Ketzid Mevarchim and a lot of times in Hilchos Shabbos. Is grape juice and wine the same thing? This halacha, is grape juice going to pater? Is it not going to pater? So this is a very big machlekes. Excuse me. This is a big machlekes taka. Excuse me. There's a big machlekes amongst the Heintig Achrein or the Achreinim. Rav Yashiv, whose yard site was this week, is quoted in many different places. Rav Yashiv is quoted as saying, Mitzah Navim ein a poiter. It's known to all those that learned the sugyas of Ketzid Mevarchim. Rav Yashiv, when it came to grape juice, had a certain shita, maybe it is related, that grape juice didn't have that same level of chashivas. And therefore, the Rav Yashiv's shita was, Mitzah Navim doesn't bother other mashkim. He says you have to be chayshish. It's a chumrah. It's not clear. He didn't say it as a briris. And therefore, if a person would drink grape juice, he's getting into a safek. We're going to see today lots of safekes that come up at the Kiddush. This will be the first safek. If I have... Excuse me. This will be the first safek. If I have grape juice, does grape juice pater other drinks? It seems to be not clear. It happens to be that the Goyin Rishleim Zalman and Ali Rishleim and Pesach and Parak Tes Ara 78, he brings down, yes, grape juice, wine, it's all the same. And they asked this question in the Shelas Rav to Rabbeinu Agador Chaim Kanievsky Zecher Tzadik Levracha, and he said, yes, Mitzah Navim Paters, it has the same strength that when you make a bracha Bari Piagafen and drink grape juice, it's the same as if you drank wine, and you do not now have to make a bracha on the water, on the apple juice, and etc. I would say that I think the Doilam will let me know. I think this is one of the not known halachas. I think there's a lot of people out there that do not know that if you drink wine, certainly about grape juice, seems Rav Yashiv didn't even know that, but if you drink wine, that paters the apple juice. I think it's one of the top 10 not known halachas in HaRav. Am I getting thumbs up or no? I think so. Now, let's make it practical. I got to put thumbs up, Rabbi Pearl. I'm right. No, I'm saying it's the first time in all these shirim, I was right. Baruch Hashem. Thank you, Rabbi Pearl. The Maisa, the Agrada, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think a lot of people also don't realize that if you're eating a bread meal and they bring out bread, they bring out wine, that they have to make a bracha on the wine. I can explain that mistake. That mistake comes because on Shabbos, you don't make the bracha on the wine when you have wine. That's because you already had a Bari Priya Golfin at the beginning of the Kiddush. But people don't realize bread paters all foods, but does not pater wine. And wine paters all drinks. And these two halachas, I think, are not so known. Now, Lemaisa, Klape, the Shiloh, does grape juice pater? It is a big fight. It's a fight in the Heintigas. I would say it's definitely a suffix, and a person has to somehow avoid that Shiloh. And if he drank grape juice at the Kiddush, and now he wants to have a cup of Coke or apple juice or who knows what, he should eat a piece of herring, like every Erlich Agutta Yid, or a piece of gefilte fish or something, or because he's going to have to pater the drink. According to some, the drink wasn't patered yet. The Rav Yashiv holds the drink wasn't patered yet. No, number one. Number two, how much wine, if you'll say wine, grape juice, how much wine, grape juice does he have to drink in order to pater? There he is at the Kiddush, and he has his eye on that piece of cake, say drank a little sip. Why did he drink a little sip? Why didn't he drink a ganze malay lukmaf? Well, he wasn't the Mekadesh. So he just wanted to do an extra mile of getting a little bit of the Kiddush. So he took a little sip. Now, before I go weiter, it seems in the Paiskin, if you drank a proper shear, you drank a malay lugmav, for example, which is the amount that you need in order to be yotzei Kiddush, then it seems to be that pater's drinks. If you did not drink at all, you didn't even have a sip, you listen to the Kiddush and you just want your mezainis, which are yotzei Kiddush, then everyone agrees the wine did not pater the water. It didn't pater the apple juice. If you didn't drink anything, you didn't pater. If you drank the malay lugmav, then even though the Chayei Adam says no, it has to be a real kvias, it has to have a certain chshivas, the Mishabura seems to say not like that. Mishabura is in Sivkat in Gimel. In Kava Lishtais, if you have a kvias, no. So then for sure it patters. And then the Mishabura brings, Afilu Amashkin Shalaya Lefanav, okay. The Chatchila Toiv Yoiser, Mishabura gets involved that maybe we'll see in a moment, does it have to be in front of you or not in front of you? But the great shaila is if a person drinks less than a malay lugmav, does that pater mashkin? Again, if you didn't drink anything, it does not pater. If you drank a malay lugmav, we paskin it paters. Let's say you drank less than a malay lugmav, you thought you're a big tzaddik, you're at a kiddush, and you wanted to get the HaRav, or you wanted to get the mylov, mitzvah min mufkar to have something from the wine of the kiddush, and now you drank a less than a malay lugmav, and now you have in front of you a cup of Coke. Do you have to make a bracha on the cup of Coke? The beer halacha on this shaila in Dibra Maskal Yayin has a very big suffix. He doesn't really know what to do. Hine, from the Divrei Chaim, it sounds like taita afilu, even if you have a tiny sip, then it patters. The bracha is what patters. Ladina tzarchin, the Mishabura does not know what to do. So he says, Nachan lechatchila, that Akapanim drink a malay lugmav. At least drink a malay lugmav. And if you didn't have a malay lugmav, the Mishabura says, somehow get out of it. Pater it. The Mishabura brings here the eitzah. How do you pater? With sugar. Like I always say, why didn't he bring the eitzah of salt? But Akapanim, the Mishabura. And this Rabbi say is halacha l'maisa l'chayra. The pashtus is that a person has to get out of the shayla. It's true, the Derech Chaim, Hitaka says if you have a tiny little sip of wine, it paters the drinks. And it's true that there are others that say b'vaday not. Mishabura is mesupik. Mishabura is mesupik. So Rosh Shlomo Zalman, it's interesting, is brought down as having said, Sveikoi Shalom Mishabura is when he had a little bit at a kiddush. When he had a little bit at a kiddush, that's where it has a chashivas, and that chashivas might be enough to pater. But a person has a little bit of wine, Rosh Shlomo Zalman said, then for sure it doesn't pater. Interesting, when you look inside the Derech Chaim, he's talking about kiddush. In Kiddush al Yayin, v'loy tam mimenu, you didn't have at all, then it doesn't pater. In Kiddush v'loy tam tzarich levarich. It's matched from the Derech Chaim, but once he would have a tam, then it paters. So it sounds like even a little bit is enough according to Derech Chaim, but he's talking about Kiddush. So halacha l'maaseh by say, when you go to that Kiddush and you have wine or grape juice perhaps, but when you have wine and you have grape juice, and now you go and you want to drink your apple juice. So if you had a malay lugmav, no bracha on the apple juice. If you didn't have anything, definitely a bracha on the apple juice. If you had a little sip, the Mishabura doesn't know what to do. So you have to avoid this shaila. And how much is a malay lugmav? Also like the biggest shaila Rabbi say. How much exactly is a malay lugmav? It's approximately 2 ounces. It's not that much, Rabbi say. So if you had a 1 shot glass worth of grape juice or wine, he's in this suffix. He's definitely in this suffix, and you got to pater yourself out of this suffix.
Why is it different than having a little bit of bread at a suda?
Why what?
Why is it different than if I only had a little bit of bread?
What's the suffix of the Derech Chaim?
Well,
First of all, you remember the Mishabura had the suffix about a little bit of bread also. So it was very good. It's the same, it'll be, according to Mishabura, it'll be the same shaila. Number 1. Number 2 is wine, perhaps, in order to have that chashivas, we're clearing maybe it's not the bracha that paters. Maybe it's the chashivas of the drinking that paters. But and the Mishabura has the suffix by bread. And Taka Mishabura was very against it if he had a little tiny piece, if it would pater everything else. Now, Rabbi say, there he is, he's sitting at this kiddush. He decided he's having wine, he doesn't want to get involved in the grape juice. He decided he's having Malay Lugmav, he doesn't want to get involved in that child. Now, the only thing he forgot to do is he forgot to make sure that there's Coca-Cola in front of him. Now they bring out the Coca-Cola. Did it pater what wasn't in front of him? So this, the Mishabura brings down a lashon over here in Sivkan Gimel. Yesh mekilim when it wasn't lefanav rakshe adaitalav. Sounds like from the Mishabura, it's not great. It sounds like the Mishabura, it would have to be in front. The only thing you could say is, like I saw in the Shmir Shabbos in Perak Nadalid in Aretz Ariches, that if it's darkei bekach, if it's a normal thing for you, so then b'vadai that's considered as if it's in front of you. And therefore, if you're at a kiddush and you're having a cup of wine and you're having malay lugma of the wine and you know they're about to bring out the cold Coke, so, or mayim chaim or whatever you guys are drinking over there in Ir HaKodesh, so then the halacha is that it would probably, yes, pater, even if you didn't have it right in front of you. Okay.
Well, so that's a halacha psuka, that even if the soda wasn't on the table, it's considered to be, what's the pshat? Taka de balabayis, it's considered to be.
Oh, so first of all, the Shmir Shabbos adds that svara also, that if you have das balabayis anyways, you could add that svara. It does seem to be that maybe galat lechatchila, it's better to have it in front of you, but definitely if you didn't, it would be okay with the evid. Now, the interesting question I had, what about kavana mefureshes to not be moitzi the apple juice? This I found a Peladik of Maisa in the Shmir Shabbos in Peregrine Dalid in the Arak of Dalid. He says, you can have kavana mefurish that with my guffin, I don't want to butter my apple juice. It's interesting to Chiddush. I saw there a Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg Zeichat Tzadik Levracha in the Kidushim Basra. They bring down on our Bir Halacha. He says, I have a raya. I had this raya, and I found that the Chaim Pinchas says the same raya. He says, why didn't the Bir Halacha who's looking for eitzas, why didn't he bring this eitzah? It's a very simple eitzah. Just have in zin that when you're making the brach, have in mind when you're making the brach on the Brei Brach and you don't want it to butter the apple juice. It's muchach from the Bir Halacha that you cannot do that. That's obviously clear from the Bir Halacha that you can't do that. Why didn't you have that? Must be doesn't work such a tonight because it's a mitzias. It's nitful memela. It's only by shar oichlim that we find such a concept. So therefore, that eitzah is not an eitzah.
Can you have that number for reshes? Can you have that reshes in any ikar and tuffle? Can I say I don't want to ikar to pata the tuffle? You can't.
So normally it's anyways a brachal vatala, brach shein tzricha. But you're saying, let's say it would be a suffix. So definitely isn't the right thing to do. Let's say he's taking a cracker and hummus, and he's having das that I want the cracker, not the pot of the hummus. It's the wrong thing. Does it work at all? It's one Michael. In the case where it's clear, let's say not one of the fakest cases. In the case where it's clear, it doesn't even work. Yeah, I don't see why it would even work. It's like a person having das that maybe I don't know. You have to think about it. It's a sugin reish vav. We'd have to don it properly. Now, let's say an interesting case. We know bracha achroina ala gefen will now pater all your drinks. By the way, Rabbi said, don't get confused. You still might have to make a bar nefashis. If you were at the kiddush and you had apple juice and wine and herring, you still got to make a bar nefashis on the herring. Your ala gefen will pater your apple juice. But your ala gefen isn't going to pater the herring. Now watch this. Here he is. He's at a kiddush, and he had a maloi lugmav of wine. Everybody's saying a maloi lugmav of wine to make an ala gefen. Now we're chazering all of Hilchas Brachos of Adanish because it's a suffix. Perhaps, and that's in Siman Reish Yud, it's a suffix. Perhaps you have to have a revius in order to make a bracha chreina. So if you had a maloi lugmav, it's a suffix. You're not allowed to get into that matziv. This is why on this Motzei Shabbos, when I'll be making Avdallah, so I don't have a children gemach over here, and my kids are already chayiv in avelis of Tisha B'Av. So Mamela, I don't have somebody to drink my wine, grape juice. So I'm going to have to drink it like it's mavur in the Paiskin, that if you don't have children or if there's no Chamar Medina is a very shver parsha. So you make it on grape juice and wine. That's what the Yashiv said to do. Anyways, because of the Shaila of Chamar Medina. So now, when I'm going to drink it, should I only drink a malay lugmav? Because with that, you're Yaitse Davdallah. or should I drink a revius? So I'm going to be drinking a revius. You know why? Because if I drink a malay lukmav, it's going to be putting myself into a suffix brachos, which I have no right to do. So Mamela, I'm going to drink the minimum sheer revius, let's say Moshe is 4 ounces or something like that, and then I'll make an alagefen because I don't want to get in the shiloh. But anyway, this he did get in the shiloh. So he drank a malay lugma of 2 ounces worth of wine, and he also drank a full cup of apple juice. So here, there's a peladika sharatzian. I'll let you machachka with this on Rosh Chodesh. It's in Siman Reish Ches, Rosh Chodesh. In Reish Ches, you've cut in ayin because it requires a lot of iyin. That's how you remember this. Rosh Chodesh, iyin. Reish Ches, sharatzian, ayin. Peladika sharatzian. Sharatzian is misupik. He says, look, an alagefen I can't make. And the water was a tuffle. So how could you make a burn nefashis? The Shartzian doesn't know. We spoke about this. If the Olam remembers, we spoke about this Shartzian. He says, "Linya brach rishayna after the sagi lifter amashkin after like shasam yayin rak malay lukmav aval bracha achreina." He says, "What should I tell you?" He says, "Im shaza pachas yesh layin." What should he do? Sharei, listen to this kasha, the Mishnah Brura. Harei, you drank a malay lukmav. So when you making a bar in a fashis on your water, on your apple juice, very nice. You made the bracha on the apple juice, but maybe you didn't pater the alagefen. Because maybe malay lugmav is the amount, the 2 ounces is the amount you need to make an alagefen. And your bar in the fashis doesn't pater alamikis and alagefens. So he says, Mameli, you can't make a bar in the fashis because you don't have a right to be making a bar in the fashis. Maybe you're supposed to be making an alagefen. That's the Mishnah Brura. Reb Moshe and Igris Moshe and Chelik Aleph and Siman Ayin says it's a peladik Maisa. What's the Mishnah Brura's suffix? Very nice. You have a suffix on your alagefen, and you don't have anything you could do about that. But where is the bracha on the apple juice? So normally we say that you make the bracha on the acre and you pater the tuffle, but you can't get away without patering the tuffle. And the Mishnah Brura, the Reb Moshe, doesn't seem to understand it. The Shevet HaLevi and Chelik Ches and Siman Kuf Samech Vav is beis. He says, the Mishnah Brura is misupik about this. He writes, the Loisachisi law, I don't understand it. He says, Vada, the apple juice needs a burn fashis. If you make a bracha of alagefen, you'll pater it. But now mitzad halacha, you're not allowed to make an alagefen because you didn't have a shear. So came the ma'aser b'vada, you have to make a burn fashis. Was that bar? Says that bar against the Mishnah Brura. We once gave a long discussion about this, which we cannot go into now. But Al-Kopanim, so let's make a sikum first on this first part. We have this fellow, he came to the Kiddush, and now he has wine in front of him, or grape juice. It's always better to make on wine. And now he has another reason he should make on wine, because if he's making the bracha on the wine, then he bevada is going to pater the mashkim so long as he's drinking malay lugmav. Okay? If he drank the grape juice, does it pater other mashkin? It's a big shaila. If he drank less than a malay lugmav, big shaila. Maybe it's only a shaila by Kiddush. Does it pater if less than malay lugmav? Big shaila. Not clear. The Shabur doesn't know. Okay, now he didn't know it's coming. Then for sure it's a big problem. If he knew it's coming, maybe he could be saymer that the wine paters, that there would be a makom to be makel on. Now he went and he drank less than a malay lugmav. And he drank a revius of an apple juice. So Mishnah Brura says, I don't know what to do now. And the Ramosha said, the Shevet HaLevi said, no, Avada, you make a burn of fashis, because what could you do? That's the first problem. First part. Then all of a sudden they bring out to this Kiddush, a winter Kiddush, maybe not, but in the summer, and they're, I don't know if you guys know this, but they talk about the global warming, Daigenish Mashiach will come way before any of their issues. But there's global warming. So what do they do to make this Kiddush bearable? They bring out the ice cream. Now, you know me, if it's an ice cream cake, it's going to turn into a mezainis by me. You know me already.
Before the Rav goes off liquid, one last shaila. Given the fact of all the fakes that the Rav announced at the beginning.
No, I didn't finish this yet. No, we're in this. We're in the middle of wine.
Okay, we're still in the mashkin. I'm sorry.
No. I finished the chazar, but we're still in wine. Wait. Look, I see the global warming is getting to you guys. You got to get air conditioning. They come out with the ice cream, and now he says, wait a minute. I made a bracha on the wine. Does wine pot the ice cream? Now, you know over here, that's not going to go very well. Because you know over here, ice cream in the middle of the meal, chazering everything over here. Ice cream in the middle of the meal, daf machan bracha. It's not potted with the bread because it's not a drink. Right now, it's in a solid form. I'm aware that the greatest goyim that lived in the last 50, 60 years, especially in the ganze Welt, the greatest goyim that lived, there's a shmua b'shmoi that held not like that. It has to be mevarer that shmua. It's not in a tshuva. But legabe wine pottering ice cream, does wine potter ice cream? If you're going to go with that Havana that there was a tzad in American soil that when you have ice cream during a bread meal, that you don't make a bracha on the ice cream. So now how far do you take this? It's mamish a drink and wine will potter ice cream? How far do you take this one? So I don't know. That to me, I think is pushing it pretty far. I would be shocked if wine could potter ice cream, but maybe it's totally zeh bazeh. Would wine potter ices? That I hear a little bit more. We spoke about this. Is ice is based on the titzah of the juiciness, or is it a maisa achila? That's a very shver shaila. How far do you take these shaylas? The one shaila I did find is I found in the Prima Godim, he's talking in Siman Reish Beis. So this is actually a Chazar in Reish Beis. In Sivkat and Chavav and Deishal Avram, that he says, he talks about, does wine pot or fruit soup? Remember, we had all of our problems, what bracha fruit soup is. So maybe that's just really a fruit, especially if you go with the shitas that you're making on it, a Bari Priya Eitz. So the Prima Godim has it sad that wine does potter fruit soup, and he's coming to argue on a Mogen Avram. In Reish Dalet, Sivkotin Yud Zayin, he says, no. If you make a Bari Priya Eitz on it, it's Vaistich Ois that's a pre. So then wine can't potter a pre. So now everybody say, again, like in every sugya in Brachos, everything is simple and clear and no smeikis at all, and borrow exactly what to do. What's the answer? The answer is have a full cup of wine and have herring to your heart's desire, and make sure you have enough herring that you can make a brain of fashes, and have enough yayin that you could be toiv leiv melech by yayin, and then you have no shilas. That's part one. What do you say about Gadisman?
Yeah, so given the two sfekas that the Rav outlined right at the beginning about Moed Mugav, etc., two sfekas, wouldn't it be maybe a chatchila to taka just to make a shackle on the soda? Wouldn't that possibly be a chatchila?
No, but has he have a right to make the shackle on the soda if he just made a very pregep and he had a malay lugmav?
No, the shayla when you didn't have Moed Mugav, the Rav said the shayla when you didn't have Moed Mugav was a suffix, right? He didn't have
a suffix, and now he has the suffix brachos. Maybe he's pottered. He's going to have herring in one pocket. So we have a lot of stuff going on in these pockets because all of our.
So you can't make a bracha on a suffix brachos. You can't. It's
right. It could be his
yaitze
ready to drink. It's
bracha. Yeah. But that you can't. That eitzah doesn't work. You can't just go ahead and make a shackle on the coke because maybe
absolutely not. If it's like saying I have bread and can I make the bracha on the chicken?
So it's like any other ketafel. You can't make a bracha on the tafel. You just can't do that. So
absolutely. Any other chocolate on that? Because I'm going to a different topic, everybody say.
Yes. No, we can do a review of cholent. Not everybody heard everything. If Rob wants to do cholent, please feel free. Are there any shilas yayin and cake? Is any shilas? Anybody have any questions so far? Yeah, the question from the floor. You have to speak up.
Right? So the shiling is then we will have to we have the same shiling, we have to anything else that you have brings in the soup.
Shilah is and this is a difficult one because of the status of grape juice, but the shilah to the Rav is if somebody drank grape juice b'teicha suda, does that somehow pater any other mashkin?
What do you mean teicha suda? It's anyways pater.
No, it doesn't pater mashkin. No.
Same shiloh.
That's a shiloh. It's grape juice like wine.
Same shiloh. Yeah. Somebody had an interesting question on Havdalah since the Rav opened the door on this week's Havdalah. He had some scheme here. He wants to make the Havdalah on the wine and then wash right away from Malka.
That's a big shaila that. And why I can pater up the Allegeffen, there's a big suffix about that. Couple of bracha achrena. Okay, now Baisai, what I'm going to do, let's see what we can get through now. Now, that was a full topic. Now what I want to try to do is I want to bring out all the possible issues that a kiddush, with that trying to chazer, as much as we can. Let's see. I have 60 issues. I don't know if we'll get through all of them, but let's see. I wrote down here 60 issues. Let's see. If we get through even 5, it's worth it. But I'm going to bring down all the different issues that come up at a kiddush of different things. Now, what I'll do is I'll say it. I won't be married on any of them. At the end, I'll try to chazer all of them. And I'll try to take into the marmokim of that topic. In other words, I'll tell you at least where the Mishnah Berurah is of that shaila, of that issue, and the basic idea of the issue. But we're not going to go out of safe into every issue. And just let's go one by one. The first issue, again, I'm not even in any order. This is the order I came to my mind when I was writing it down last night. The first thing you come to a kiddush, of course, is crackers and herring. No, when it comes to crackers and herring, so that does it need one bracha? Does it need 2 brachas? The marmokim on that is, of course, Reishud Beis, Sif Beis, the whole Sif Beis, and Mishnah Berurah Kuf Zamiches, Sif Kotin Memhei. What is halacha l'maisa? Halacha l'maisa is, I think most people today, they like the herring, they like the cracker. It's 2 separate things. You want both of them. It's layers, and therefore it's 2 brachas. Make 2 different brachas. Obviously, there's kedim of brachas. So you make first the mezainis, and then, of course, don't forget, he's going to have an eitz and an adam and shackle. We'll get to all that. But that's number 1. Then, at that same kiddush, they bring out a fruit bowl, and it's got inside there melon, mit, apricots. What else do you guys have in America? They have grapes there yet? Mistama, pomegranates. So now when you're going to make the bracha on that fruit, pineapples, our favorite. Now, when you're going to make that bracha on the fruit salad, what bracha is that fruit salad? Is it adam or is it eitz? So we know that's a big fight, the Mishnah Berurah and the Chayodam. But if you have in every spoon, basically both of them, you look at the roiv, and you have to figure out what the roiv is. You're going to see all these, all these intelligent people sitting there trying to count, and how much apples there are and how much apricots. You have to figure it out. What's the roiv? Otherwise, got to pater it on something else. Ligabe, the shaila of the cholent, that's a major shaila. I won't be myrich on that because it's such a big shaila. If it's a very, very soupy cholent with lots of barley, then it's a mezainis. If it's very big, distinct pieces, and you're eating them separately, a piece of meat, a potato, a barley, a separate piece of kishka, so then there's a very big svar over there that you should eat it separately and make 3 different brachas. This were big fights, obviously. Next is the shaila.
Rav, eat it in 1 spoon, which is many people do. What then?
And he's eating it. It's big chunks and big pieces.
You dig it.
I think stuff.
No, you dig into a cholent, and whatever comes on the spoon, you have beans.
No, but there's 2 different types of cholent.
Barley.
There's a cholent which is a soupy cholent, and it's a lot of barley and everything, and it's small pieces of meat and small potato. Then I hear it's a mezainis. But if it's like big pieces and you're eating a separate potato and a separate beef because they're big pieces, I don't know. It's hard for me to understand that should be. I don't know if that's what the Mishnah Berurah was talking about. So therefore, there I would hear it clearly that it would be a makom to be makel to distinctly eat it. It's even better if he could separate it on his plate. It won't be boyer. He's taking the good from the bad. Right.
If you didn't kaf achas, why don't you have to be mevar, which is the roiv and which is the
So
the
it's
meat?
true, but at Kama that it's like meatballs and spaghetti. If you have big meatballs and big spaghetti, Shvetzigleibin, that such a thing is considered. But again, each cholent is different. I'm talking about maybe not the roiv cholent that the Olam is talking about. Could be the store-bought cholents. They're very soupy and they're very this and enechanami. But you don't go with roiv. We go mezainis. One still be barley, still be mezainis. Now, the
has to be be'en, and the Mishnah said it has to be be'en. And Shabbos morning, there's a big shaila. We don't see the barley be'en on Shabbos morning. That's the problem.
really?
And there's a fight here. There's the numerous types of different cholent. Store-bought cholent. Am I wrong about this? Store-bought cholent. You see the barley?
The store-bought cholent, you don't see the barley so much.
At home, yes. The store, not so much.
I don't see what's the problem. You see, if you know it's in there, then it's in there.
That's enough. That's enough. You know it's in there. Doesn't have to be be'en.
I don't know if it's not be'en. I think it's just very small. If it's not be'en.
Disappears.
The little dots, all those little dots. They're not barley, those little dots.
Okay, and one argument is I'm getting back to.
Next is, okay, today they put out these salads with the croutons in them. That's a major problem. Anybody who learned in this room knows that is a major problem. I'm not talking about the yellow ones that were just deep fried and whatever. I'm talking about there's pieces of bread. They cut them up into hundreds of pieces and they were already baked. This gets into the major shaila of tzvibak, if you remember we spoke, which is it's a mid-process. You're baking a bread in order to use as a snacky type of food. So do we say we stop the process in the middle and we have a mitzi because it was a full piece of bread? Or do we say, no, we look at the end product. It was all baked, al das that. This was kuf samches, sifir gimel, sifir dalet. It was telling that Rosh Hashanah had a kula in this. He called it a mezainis. Others considered it a mitzi. If I'm not mistaken, I think Rebelsky considered it a mitzi. That's one issue with the croutons. Another issue with the croutons, I never understood this. They have them out at the kiddushes and they have them out in the salads as if like there's no shaila. It's like the biggest shaila in HBrachos. The next shaila you have is what's the bracha on the salad. It's all arangemished with mezainis. So mezainis, the last time I checked, is kol sheyesh ba michameshes min dagim, and it's all mixed. This isn't the shaila of crackers and herring, which is layers. So it's all mixed. I don't know. Maybe you have to worry that it's either the whole thing's a maitzir, the whole thing's a mezainis, or maybe there's so many spoons that you're eating without it, so that maybe it's two separate foods. But whatever it is a shaila. I stay away from it. I certainly stay away from it. It's certainly a shaila. Next, don't forget the shaila of the Aruch HaShulchan and Kuf Samech Cut in Yuchetz. He says, Me'esen hazeh filled by the kiddush. Some people, they eat so much, not that they have to bench, and not they have to say ne'ilah. They eat so much sometimes at the kiddush. So that's another issue of how do you have to worry about that. Now, how much is that? That gets labedik, because we know that the Mishbura in Sivkat and Chavdalid discusses tziruf, crackers together with all the other stuff at the Kiddush. Ramoshe and Gimel Lamed Beis, if you remember, was mitzaref even cake to the other stuff. That was the Kiddush of Ramoshe, that even things that you wouldn't eat as a malafis, nobody's being malafis to cake. So if it's crackers, then we hear that you have a lot less leeway. If it's cake, there were a lot more mekilim that cake is maybe not mitzaref to the herring. And that was another issue a person has to avoid. What happens? He comes to the Kiddush and he decided, a normal guy, he's going to have, a few crackers, discuss a little bit of cake. Grada, what bracha do you make first? You make the bracha on the cracker. Number one, it's wheat. Don't go and make the bracha on the barley, which is soirim. That's a kadima bracha, simukuf samachei. You have to make first on the cracker, which is a shalom. And even if it's not a shalom, let's say I have a piece of cake against barley. So of course, the piece of cake wins because it's wheat. Wheat beats barley in Kedim and Brachos. As a matter of fact, you should know Rabbi says it's a very big shaila, which you remember, that's the Ramah in Reshud Beis. I think it was in Sif Aleph. What happens if I make a bracha? No, sorry, it just moved. Reshud Aleph Sif Hey. In the sugi of Kedim and Brachos, the Ramah's in Reshud Aleph Sif Hey. What happens if I make a bracha on something which is not as chashiv as like we spoke out? I make an apple and then I plan on having afterward a grape. Or I make a bracha on barley and then I have somebody who's more chashiv than barley. Who's more chashiv than barley? Cake, wheat. The Ramah at Tzad there, if you remember, that in the dinim of Kedima and Brachos, if you messed up on the Kedima and Brachos when she's more chashiv, it might not even work. I don't know if you remember a Geshmaka thing we heard from the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan said, that's only if you know this halacha. It was the Chaytei Nitzker. If you don't know this halacha, so then the person's das is anyways on everything because he doesn't know this halacha. But you shouldn't do in that situation the chatchila for shpna. You make the bracha on the wheat product, and certainly if it's a shalom, you make it on the shalom, which is a wheat product. So I made my crackers. I made them as zaynis. I'm a simple guy. I'm just having some crackers, some cake, a bissel herring, and a gevait. Then one piece of cake leads into another piece of cake. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there, and then all of a sudden, kumt epis, you hear something, eat me. You hear one of the cakes, and he's saying, no, it's pasnish. And what about boishes hapas? And you sit there, and I saw you beforehand, and you covered the cake when you made the kiddush, because you were chayshish for the sheet of the kiddush Shulchan Aruch, and you brought two pieces of cake together, and doesn't yet. And now my busha, and here I am, and you're not eating me. And what could you do? Ben Adam lepitoi. So you decide to eat this piece of cake. But then you realize, wait a minute. Ich hab gegessen a sehr viel cake. I ate so much cake. Right? This is what the Moshe wrote in the Tshuva. Cakes. Kuf yud yud kuf samech. Ich hab gegessen a sehr viel cakes that I'm holding now by, wait a minute, now I have to bench. Okay, so I'll bench. I have no problem benching. Noch say, noch besser. Wait, Rabid, do you have to make now mezainis on the next piece of cake? So if you plan on having now, fragnish, a sehr viel cake. Okay, so you'll have to make another amoitzi. But now you're having one more cake. You didn't know the other guys are going to start talking to you. So now it says the Mishabura Marita Gemaisa. Now you have to make another mezainis. Because when you had the original mezainis, even though mezainis b'diavad patters maybe all foods like we learned, but it only patters till the extent you can't say that he had das, he's going to eat this, because if he would have had das, he was going to eat this, then he had to make a moitzi. It's like the Mishabura say, if I had 20 pieces of cake, whatever, and now you realize, hey, what are you doing? Now you have to bench. Okay, but I'll have one more anyways if I'm going to bench. So now when you eat that next piece of cake, you never made a brach on this piece of cake because your mezainis couldn't have gone this far. So now you have to make a mezainis. Next. Well, okay, that's the kitzer, like I said, that, there's another kitzer Shulchan Aruch. The kitzer Shulchan Aruch says, okay, look, I come to the Kiddush, I have a cracker. Then after I have the cracker, I have a piece of cake. After it's a shemsach, to have a piece of cake, nice sponge cake. Okay. Now I have to have the sponge cake. Now I have, let's see, what's next? He had already Nilosh, he had already Parach, Mamula. Now he sees over there, let's do an apple strudel. It's almost an avera not to have an apple strudel. It's baltashchis. Mom baltashchis. So he has now the apple strudel, mid the cake, mid the cracker. Okay, now it's time to have alamichia, so you can go home and finally eat. Alamichia, Rabid, you just had according to every sheet that passes above a kisnet. I mean, you had a pretzel, that's one sheet that's a moitzi. The other sheet is hold the moitzi. Okay, no, but I hold that it's not a moitzi. Okay, so you had cake, nilosh. The other sheet is hold your moitzi. No, nilosh is not a moitzi. Okay, then I have Mamula is a moitzi. No, I hold the other ones. Rabbi, du bist der ganze Stile. You had all three. One of them is for sure a moitzi. So the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says bench. Okay, this is totally in the Mishabura. If the shaila of Pasuk Babakisnin is a psak bevadai, in other words, they're all not kaviyah. There's no machlokes amongst these rishonim. This was mit the Maimon Mordechai, mit the Kivega, mit the ganze Bialoch in them. Then the Stipler, he's bringing out two ragalach, if you guys remember, and he's making, because you have to have Pasuk Babakisnin Mishnah. The Minchas Yitzchak says it's not the minig. It's not the minig. Next, it's kum to Yushalmi kugel. How could you not have a piece of Yushalmi kugel? Rachmanis. And the Yushalmi kugel gets me out of all my shilas, right? I'll have Yushalmi kugel, thus I'll get the Lakshin kugel. I can have, who remembers what I said? You guys, but this is the Chazorah, everybody say. What do I always say? You can have 50 pieces of Yushalmi kugel. And when you get out of the hospital, so then all you have to do is make alamichya. Even that was a machlekes. Kum the melech shel kol beis Yisrael, Rav Eliashiv Zecher Tzadik Levracha. And he says, Yushalmi kugel, das is amoitzi. And you have to take challah. Why? Because we don't look at the process of the lakshin. Now you baked it into a bread. I think most of the place came in the minig oilim is not like that. And therefore it's a mezainis and alamicha, even if you have 30 pieces, because it's a cooked mezainis. Ayin in Shulchan Aruch Siman Kuf Samech Ches in Sivud, Sivud Aleph. The next shaila was Kedim and Brachos. What's the Kedim and Brachos? He comes to his Kiddush, Mezainis, we dealt already with Mezainis. Then normally it's Yayin, but over here you have the Baishas Apas. Okay, so we'll cover the bread which is in front of me, at least the cake I'm going to eat. Then we have to make a major decision over here. Eitzer Adama. It's a major decision, and it becomes even more compounded because if I'm dealing only with eitzes, so then we know you'll make on the Zayin Minim, and we'll remember the Seder Kedim of the Zayin Minim, the pits. Who remembers the pits by side? You go from pit to pit to pit. That's how you remember. If there's an aleph, she comes first. It's only one pit. A date is a double pit. And how do you remember a date is a Tamar? I'd rather date a girl named Tamar than a girl named Te'ena. So you have aleph, mita, date, that's 2 pits. Then after that was a grape, which is lots of pits. Then it's to a fig, this is a sach pits, and there's a pomegranate, which is the pits. So if you have in front of you a pomegranate and an olive, I'm going to make a bracha on the olive. Good. And if you have a shalom, that's the next milah. And then afterwards is chaviv. But what if I have watermelon and I love watermelon and I love watermelon even more than grapes? So then you make a bracha on the adama. Remember Abba Yisai? When you're in second bracha, then the watermelon, the chaviv beats even an 8. Afterward, I'm going to make my shahakal. I'm going to make my shahakal. Now, the yid, he comes, and if you want to get into real sfeikis, let's say I have something which b'di eved you'd be yotzei with a bari priya 8 or a bari priya dama. Now this is a very serious problem. Let's say I have a food, and I made on it a shahakal. I'll say it like this: it's Mishabur and Rach Basic Cotton and Dalid, and he says, if you have a food that the bracha is shahakal, b'di eved and 8. Okay, there's a lot of foods like that. The Brachos shako, but the Eved Adama. Lots of foods like that. All the foods that are mashed up and whatnot, the chips, the Doritos, and these things. Now, let's say I'm at this Kiddush and I had a peanut. And we know all nuts, are 8s, except for peanuts and donuts. So I had a peanut and I made an Adama. And now they bring out Doritos, corn chips, whatever. Wait a minute, Ravid, you just made an adama on the peanut. Yeah, thank you. I know I made an adama on the peanut. Wait, but maybe you're yotzei because Doritos and the corn chips is a suffix. We make a shahakal because it's all pulverized and we don't know what to do. So we make a shahakal. But the Mishabura says in Reish Beis Nun Dalid, if you make a bracha on a pri and there's a suffix on the other food, so now he says, if mivarach al pri, now it's a suffix if you can make now shahakal, because maybe you're already yotzei. This is a major problem. And I'll tell you even worse. If you made a bracha on a peanut, maybe that pat is your jelly. What? I made a bracha on the peanut? There's like a medrash pliya. I made a bracha on the peanut, and maybe it patters those jelly rings or the candies. What shaykhs? Because what's a gummy bear made of? What's the DNA of a gummy bear? What's the DNA of these sour sticks? Sugar. Very healthy. So what bracha do you make on sugar? Don't know. Like some Sefer never had sugar because he didn't know what bracha to make. Okay, we make shackle because b'diavad you make a shackle. What could you do? Abai say, you just had a peanut. Is there a tzad that on sugar you make a dama? Yeah. We don't because it's a zavik. Okay, but you just made a bracha on the peanut. If you made a bracha on the peanut, I have you right now to make a bracha on the sour stick. Maybe you're yotzei already with the peanut. I am not getting the Nobel Peace Prize for this one, Rabbi Yisai. And it gets even worse. I had an apple, and now there's a piece of chocolate there. Chocolate? I've never knew why on chocolate you don't make hates. Why on chocolate don't you make hates? It's oimid lekach, not daiti, all those stars we spoke about. So we make shackle, kasveikis, and whatnot, but you just made a bracha, a bright eights on an apple. How are you going to go and have now a piece of chocolate that maybe you already yotzei? So you have to say all types of stories. I didn't have that. Okay, but Rabbi say, so garnish pashit. I wouldn't get into these shilas. I certainly wouldn't get into these shilas. Next. Oh, now we're going to have fun, Rabbi say. It's kumtis yid. And he's now holding already, I'm making him some shiga. He says, Lozma Lane. I'm making a bracha achrayna. That you can't cause trouble in a bracha achrayna. Let's see if we can cause trouble in the bracha achrayna. So first of all, this yid comes and we ask him, Rabbi Yid, you're making a bracha achrayna? Did you have cake? He says, yeah, I had cake. Did you have a kazayas? He says, oh, yeah, I had a kazayas. You're telling me, yeah, you had a kazayas? Really? So I had a kazayas. You had a kazayas of flour within a kedei achilas pras? He says, what flour? What's kedei achilas pras? What do you want from me? He tells me, Rabbi Yid, don't you know that this is a Mishnah Berurah in Siman Reish Ches that he tells you that you're supposed to be having a kazayas of a flour. So if you have a sponge cake, that a kazayas of flour is 4 or 5 pieces. He says, Rabbi, you just told me a minute ago I can't eat too much cake. And you told me, Rabbi Moshe, I can't, and the cake is going to, I hear. But you had a piece of cake. You only had 1 piece of cake, but how did kazayas? No, you didn't have a kazayas of flour within a kedei achilas pras. Okay, leave me alone. I say, no, I can't leave you alone because I can't let you make an alamichya because you can't make a. He says, all right, but there's a minig olam. What's the minig olam? The minig olam is that the Mishabura brings is a minig olam that if you have a piece of cake with a kazayis of the cake, even though it's not a kazayis of the flour, the minig olam is to make an alamichya. So he's right about to make the minig olam, the cake. He's about to make the alamichya. You tell them about Moshe and the Satmar Rebbe, and they came from different worlds. Rabbi said, there's from Luban, there's Hungarian, there's a Satmar, there's from the Lower East Side. They both said, "Was for a minig olam is this? Ich habe nicht gehört, dass ein minig. In Luban sind nicht gewinnt kein minig. Bei uns in St. Mary in St. Mars sind nicht gewinnt kein minig. We didn't have such a minig. I'm not making alamichya." You tell him, don't make alamichya. He says, I'm doing like the minig olam, and he makes an alamichya. And he says like this to you, I made the alamichya. You tell him, good, but now you have a bigger problem. What problem do I have now? I made a alamichya. I'm going to tell him, Rabbi, you also drank a revius of wine, because I told you better drink a revius of wine, because if you have a malay lugmav, it's a suffix ala. He says, okay, fine. You tell him, Rabbi, you didn't throw in the alagefen. He says, you're right. I forgot to throw in the alagefen. Now what? You tell him, I don't know. This is a major problem. What's the major problem? Well, I'll make an alagefen now. Tell him, wait, slowly. Let's say you drank wine. Excuse me. Let's say, you drank wine and you made an alamichya. B'di'evet. Right? You got shikar. So you were there, you were making your alamichya instead of making alagefen, like you're supposed to. Regular case, you drank a cup of wine and you got a little shikar and you decide instead of an alagefen, you made an alamichya. What's the din in that case? The din is your yoitze. In that case, if you did that, you're yoitze. That's what it says in Shulchan Aruch and Siman Reish Ches Sif Yud Zayin. However, if you had a mezainis and wine, and by mistake you made an alamichya, so now maybe your alamichya doesn't part of the wine, because the alamichya went on the mezainis product, and therefore you have to make a separate alagefen. You have to make a separate alagefen. The Mishabura is noita like this in Siman Reish Ches, in Sivkot and Samach Tes. So I guess we'll let him. But he says, all right, so now I make an alagefen. Good, he makes his alagefen, everything's fine. And now he wants to get in on it also. He sees it could also cause trouble. So he turns to the guy next to him and he says to him, don't make the same mistake that I made. Okay? I had cake and I had wine. I saw you also had cake and you also had wine. You make sure that you throw in the alamichya and the alagefen, throw it in there, or you're going to have trouble. Oh, he says, shkoyach, thank you very much. He makes an alamichya and he throws in the alagefen. You come over to him, what are you doing? Why are you putting in alagefen? He says, I had a bit of wine. You tell him, Rabbi, you had a tiny sip of wine. If you had a suffix amount of wine that itself might require an alagefen, then the Mishnah Berurah has a gewaldige chiddush that the Mishnah Berurah says that you can add in, if there's a suffix shear, you can add in the alagefen. Again, I have a cake, alamichya vadai shear, and now I want to leg through the alagefen because I have a suffix that I might need an alagefen. So normally we'd say too bad, but now you're anyways making alamichya, we let you throw in the alagefen. But what if I have a vadai nish shear? I have one shot glass of wine, just to be yaitse, even though that wine is going to get me into other problems. Remember, boys, that we spoke about? Because now did it pot to the other drinks? Okay, so I had herring because it might not pot to the other drinks. But if you have a vadai cake, a vadai alamichya, and you now throw in for the alagefen, you can't throw in the alagefen. If you have a suffix that you might have to make an alagefen, you can throw it in. But if you have no suffix and you know bevadai that you didn't have a shear, you can't throw it in. Now there is a Rav Moshe. It says not like this. He says in Chelik Beis and Sim Kuftes that you can throw it in even if you vadai didn't have the shear. But Rav Moshe is coming to argue in Mishnah Berurah, and I saw that in the Zayis Brachos, page 48, they bring down that Rav Moshe was chayzer balpeh. And the truth is, it's a Mishnah Berurah, not like Rav Moshe. So Mistama, even if a chazara we can't prove, but maybe you should go with the chazara because it's against the Mishnah Berurah anyways. So this guy threw in a alagefen into an alamichya, but he had only a shot glass of wine. So he shouldn't have thrown it in. He absolutely should not have thrown it in. Next, you got to make sure, Abaisai, don't forget, drinks and salads are not mitzvah for a bracha achreina. Okay, but this I don't think we spoke about. Next, be careful. If you're going to have a beria, let's say you have one pomegranate seed, that might be a beria. If that's a beria, you might have to make an ala eitz, because even though it's not a kizayis worth of pomegranates, there was one there and you wanted to get your HaRav on a pomegranate seed. But now you got a big problem because that's a beria, and perhaps itself requires an ala eitz. Maybe you need a bracha achreina, so you're putting yourself into a suffix. You're putting yourself into a suffix. See, from the time that the Kiddush is over. Rabbi say, it's hard to make a chazara. It's hard to make a chazara. Maybe this is why it says Lo yayu yomim toivim l'Yisrael ki yom kippurim, because ein simcha ela kataras asveikis, and Yom Kippurim there are no suffix brachos. Rabbi say there are no suffix brachos. Alvai b'zeicha zayin taka Rabbi say to binyan beis hamikdash v'meher b'yameinu. If so, Mitzvah the shiurim will be in Yerushalayim, Yer HaKodesh. The first shir Rabbi I'll give, first we have to talk about the halachas klapei tum v'tayra. We'll have to be doing shlishi and shvi of the Taira process, and Mitzvah it'll be the Marmakaimis I'll send to Rabbi Gaddis Min Bez Hashem.
We heard there's a paraduma in Eretz Yisrael. Is that correct, HaRav?
It's all being arranged. Don't worry. I'm taking care of it, Bez Hashem. And I have already the shlita to be the mana on the korbanis. It's all being dealt with. You guys just get here and we'll deal with it when you get here.
Oh man, Kane here outside. Yeah,